Chapter 6 of Foundational Principles of a Disciple of Jesus. Integrate the various dimensions of your identity. Pray and work for greater integration of the linear, sequential, analytical, literal, logical, past and future focused, I-centered side with the intuitive, holistic, creative, emotional, present moment awareness of the interconnectivity of all reality as a we-centered side. Every member of the body is valuable. From 1 Corinthians chapter 12. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the organs in the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single organ, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the parts of the body which seem to be weaker are indispensable, and those parts of the body which we think less honorable we invest with the greater honor, and our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. But God has so adjusted the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior part, that there may be no discord in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. The opposite of integration, writes Thompson, is death, and I quote, a state of disintegration, disconnection, and isolation, end of quote. To allow for the integration of the various dimensions of my being to occur, I commit to balance my tendency towards a clearly defined, future-oriented, goal-driven life with appropriately delighting in the present moment as it unfolds according to God's providential designs. I also will balance my training in boxing and fighting arts with cultivating a contemplative appreciation of beauty, interconnectivity, and of existing in harmonious relationship with others. In identifying these two dimensions of my personality in the brain, Kurt Thompson writes, and I quote, the right is deeply aware of the present moment and the individual's connection to all things, the state of we. The left, on the other hand, is concerned not with the present moment, but with the past and the future, keeps track of what has come before in order to protect the individual from future danger. The left hemisphere sets me apart as me, someone who is separate and individuated, end of quote. Practices that help me to develop and integrate a contemplative dimension where I recognize my interconnectivity with others, with my sense of being an individual with boundaries, I need to defend include the following. Smelling a flower and allowing the fragrance to draw me into the present moment while I thank God for the present moment. According to Bars, the unaffirmed person, therefore, and I quote, must dare to restrict the activity of his mind so his heart can be more open and sensitive. It takes courage to be open with the heart, for one who is more vulnerable when one relinquishes the protective workings of the mind. For this reason, the unaffirmed person must first apply these principles only to the world of animals, plants, and minerals, to what we usually call nature. In that world, he cannot be hurt as he has been hurt by the human beings who fail to be present to him. For the time being, while engaged in natural or earthly contemplation, he must try not to bother with people, or at least to do so as infrequently as possible. In order to reduce all unnecessary stimulation of his mind, the unaffirmed person, like the affirmed person, who must preserve his affectivity, must avoid all unnecessary distractions. The trivia offered by TV, radio, telephone, papers, and magazine, and solve daily problems as soon as they arise. This also cuts down on fear and anxiety. He must arrange as much as possible for the greater quiet and more silence in his life. End of quote. Other activities: taking a pause to admire a sunset, contemplating wholesome expressions of art and music, daily in an active way, engaging in art or music. Still other practices that Conrad Bars encourages include, and I quote, gourmet drinking and dining, attending symphonies, plays, ballets, good literature, visit to museums, and so on, all refine the senses. Simply following one's normal breathing in an atmosphere of quiet, silence, and relaxation, listening to a symphony without trying to figure out who composed the music, or what instruments are being used, etc. One simply tries to be without doing. End of quotation. In affirming the value of the arts, Thompson writes, and I quote, "Nowhere does the power and grace of interpersonal neurobiology speak more eloquently than in and through the arts, for it is in drama, painting, music, sculpture, poetry, and dance, to name but a few, that activate the resonance circuits of the right hemisphere and weave a deeply felt sense of meaning into the more logical tapestry of the left brain. As such, the arts have the potential to facilitate the integration of our minds. Perhaps they do so because they reflect our Creator's beauty, not unlike so many wonders we observe in the natural universe." End of quote. Other ways that will help in the integration process include the following: reflecting on poetry, focusing on the present moment by being aware of my breathing, inhaling while praying the first part of the Jesus prayer, or in an abbreviated form such as the name Jesus, and exhaling while praying the second part, or an abbreviated form such as mercy. The complete Jesus prayer is, "Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner." By praying the Jesus prayer in this manner, I am, in a certain sense, breathing in Jesus, while exhaling undue anxiety, tension, resentment, and anger. As recommended by Dr. Gregory Bottaro, to express gratitude to God for my body and senses by focusing on each sense: hearing, seeing, smelling, touching, and tasting. When relating to other people, to be aware of their facial cues, their emotions, and the possible good motivations that I may be able to elicit from them, following the motivational interviewing steps of OARS: open-ended questions, affirmation, reflective listening, summarizing. OARS, acronym. If we just focus on affirmation with attunement and mutual delight, affirming what is good in another, reflective listening is appropriately reflecting emotions and ideas of others. Summarizing is summarizing the other's ideas to verify if I understood them sufficiently. To seek ways to gracefully transition myself and others from a heightened emotional state to a less heightened states. This entails not unnecessarily shaming myself or others by causing reactive, intense emotional pain when, due to a sudden break that I apply, I and or the other person experience a sudden change from a heightened state to a deflated state. An example that Thompson gives is when the risen Jesus was with Peter by a fire and asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" The fire and the question likely evoked in Peter's mind the memory of sitting by a similar fire when Jesus was being condemned to death. When Peter was asked over this earlier fire if he knew Jesus, Peter emphatically denied that he knew Jesus. Instead of scolding Peter, the risen Jesus is simply, writes Thompson, and I quote, present with Peter in his shame and his fear in order to heal them. Jesus is leaving no memory unchanged and no emotion left unintegrated. To regularly and appropriately reveal myself, including areas of weakness and vulnerabilities, to trusted people, such as to a spiritual director, counselor, or priest friend. According to Thompson, and I quote, "It is only when we allow ourselves to be known, when we allow for intimacy, that we permit another person to use all of his or her nonverbal power to activate those parts of our right hemisphere that represent emotional states that are too painful for us to bear in the absence of another brain. End of quotation. The appreciation of beauty as a reality to be in respectful awe and reverence of, rather than to possess and control, explains D.C. Schindler, greatly helps to moderate my logical, pragmatic nature that, when unchecked, can view everything from the standpoint of how it is useful to me. This contemplative gaze upon that which is perceived as beautiful is godlike, for, comments Paulo Prosperi, after God creates the world and then man, he calls them good and very good. The Hebrew word for good, tov, means not only good but beautiful or good to see. For this reason, when around 250 BC, Jewish translators translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek, called the Septuagint, the Genesis's word tov was translated by the Greek word kalon, which comes from the root word kalos, meaning beauty. In relating reverent wonder to the gaze of children, Father Menard writes, and I quote, "Imitate the children. They, like the poets, marvel at everything they see, a sunset, a whispering stream, a bird singing, an ant walking around, a star that appears, a new suit, shoes, a drawing, an image. What do I know? Everything amazes them. Everything brings them joy. Imitate them. Do not despise the little joys of life, those ordinary joys that you do not pay attention to. Many wise men have said that they are the greatest, the most revealing. Take the time to savor every joyful event, to taste every beautiful landscape, to love every loved one, as if everyone was one and only in your life." End of quote. As a celibate priest, I'm called to participate in God's contemplative, appreciative gaze upon beautiful creatures. This virginal gaze, describes Prosperi, and I quote, allows us to share in God's gratuitous love for everything, and does so precisely because it makes visible to us the inner dignity of things. I love the flower, not because I get something from it, but because it is beautiful and therefore deserves to exist. I love you because you are beautiful, and it makes me happy that you exist. End of quotation.